Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as ye know that your labor is not in vain.
Alrighty, welcome after 1 month back to the Steadfast podcast. I'm Caleb.
And I'm Joe.
So, Dad, we were really busy this last month.
Yeah.
So, what all did you do?
Well, we had, I don't want to say the holiday season because I don't want to really clump Christmas into a generic term like that, but we had Thanksgiving and we had Christmas.
Yeah.
So we just had fun, just kind of enjoying the family.
Yeah. It was definitely a busy month because I feel like we definitely did a lot of traveling.
Yeah.
So at the beginning, after the first week of December, we all went to Branson and hung out. And then right out the back, me and you, we did a day trip and hung out with Papa Wendell.
Yeah.
And then after that, I got a couple days, and then me and Lindsay went to Arkansas to go be with her family. So it was just constant traveling.
So you just like being on the road.
I guess so. I might not have a choice. But, all right. So, Dad, you had to remind me when we were getting ready. But what was your wow moment for this last month?
Okay, so my wow moment. I feel like we're almost like doing the first podcast here. It's been so long.
Yeah.
So, but the wow moment, something that I really appreciate that kind of stuck out that God did is during Christmas time. It seemed like the kids were more excited about seeing what presents people were going to open that the kids had bought for people instead of them wondering what they got.
Yeah.
You know, because they took the time and to think of gift ideas for everybody, and they used their own money that they had earned. You know, we don't really do an allowance at our house, you know.
Yeah.
So any money they have is because they've earned it and done stuff outside their chores. So they've taken this money that they've earned and they spent it on other people, and they were more excited about watching us open presents that they bought.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really awesome. That was a big wow moment for me as a dad.
Yeah, that's kind of what my wow moment was too, thinking about it, is just the excitement of giving the gifts, seeing the people's reaction. And also it was so cool that my younger siblings were excited to do it.
Yeah.
You know, because I will confess that when I was their age, I wasn't as excited or determined to give people gifts. I think it was actually Lindsay who helped me start enjoying giving gifts. Because I remember the first year we were married, we were drawing names out of a hat to see which kid would buy for which kid. And then I remember when we were driving back to our apartment, she was like, "Oh, I hope you know we're going to buy everyone gifts." And so that's the way it's been since then.
That's awesome.
Also, I would like to add that safe travels. So as much driving as we did, just being thankful for the safe travels.
Good deal. Good deal.
All right. So, Dad, what time is it?
Oh, is it already that time?
It's already that time.
Hot topic.
So our hot topic for this week, in as many words as I can pronounce, we're bringing together just one business book each that we would like to present to you guys. So, Dad, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, it's because we're really into small business or, you know, business ownership, entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so we thought it being the beginning of the year, and not just that, but finances also, that people might be wanting to look at their finances or relook at their finances. They might want to look at taking risks, a business venture, or they might just be looking for more books to read. You know, like that might be some people's New Year's resolutions read more books. Yeah. So I thought we would come up with a couple of ideas to throw out there to people if they haven't already read them.
Yeah, and I also figured since we put that we're entrepreneurs in our YouTube, I don't know if it's YouTube bio or what, for our channel, it might be good to talk about some business stuff. Yeah. So, am I going first?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So, I didn't realize that the cover kind of matches my shirt. But the book I'm bringing forward is The Go-Giver. Hopefully that can be seen in the shot. Okay. Dad, do you see it?
Yeah.
So, my wife ordered the book. She did the research and she read it. And I don't know if you remember, but she made all of us read it after she read it because it was just that big of a book to her. But it's called The Go-Giver, and it basically it's not a true story, but it creates this story. You follow this one character, and he's trying to figure out like how to be successful. He's at this job. He feels like he's doing everything he can, and yet he's still stuck, and he's still constantly stressed out. And then he's also realizing that it's causing some stress with his marriage. So it's taking that situation, and then he's also trying to figure out how he can advance. So in it, you talk about, and it calls it in the book, the 5 laws of stratospheric success. So you have the law of value, the law of compensation, the law of influence, the law of authenticity, and the law of receptivity. And I wrote down an explanation for each one, but I'm not going to do that just in case anybody does end up reading the book. I don't want to spoil all of it away. But what's also cool is it shows how some of these rules that can be applied in business can also be applied in just your everyday life. Mm-hmm. And I'm very cautious in saying that because sometimes that can be like you're trying to upsell something and it could be kind of deceiving and you don't want to do that in your everyday life. Yeah. But these laws, they're not trying to present you as deceitful. You're trying to be as authentic and kind as possible, pretty much, and showing you how it can work for your business life and your at-home life. Okay. So The Go-Giver, and it was written by Bob Berg and John David Mann.
Yeah, and I've read that book because you guys recommended it, and it's a pretty good book. Yeah. I liked it.
Yeah, but the reason Lindsay ordered it, too, was because she wants to read business books, but she also likes a story in her book, and so this kind of fit both. This definitely fit both the criteria. Yeah. So
good deal.
All right, Dad.
All right. So the book I recommend is The Richest Man in Babylon. So I actually came across this book through hearsay through a reliable source. A buddy of mine, he said that he would watch a podcast that would interview millionaires. And at the end of the interview, they would ask these millionaires, what books do you recommend? And it seems like more times than not, millionaires were recommending this book, The Richest Man in Babylon. And it's kind of the same thing. It's a set in kind of a storytelling scenario in ancient Babylon. Yeah. So it talks about this guy and what he goes through. I'm going to read 2 sentences out of the book to kind of give you a gist of what it's about. So it says, Babylon was like this, a mixture of grandeur and squalor, of dazzling wealth and dire poverty, crowded together without plan or system within the protecting walls of the city. So it's saying, here's this huge city that has a mixture of both the wealthiest people in the world at that time, this was ancient Babylon, and it had the poor people, and they were just kind of living side by side. And so basically it's kind of like, what's the difference between the two? The rich and the poor, they're both living in the same city. Yeah. And, it's almost kind of like where we're at now in America.
Yeah. I was going to say, does that sound familiar?
Exactly. So does that sound familiar? And they said, he says, we have earned much coin in the years that have passed, yet to know the joys that come from wealth, we must dream about them. What is the matter? Why cannot we acquire silver and gold more than enough for food and robes? So it's about, what can we do to be rich? And it's about this gentleman who is a hard worker and has worked hard his whole life, but then at the end of the day, his best friend comes and asks to borrow, 2 shekels. Yeah. And he's like, I'm just like you, I'm broke. Yeah. And they're like, what are we doing wrong? There's this buddy we went to school with, and he is the richest man in Babylon now. Yeah. So they go to him and ask him for advice on what it takes to be rich. And what I thought was interesting about this book was that it was written in the 1920s. Mm-hmm. And I know I said 1920s and not 2020s. Yeah. So this book is almost 100 years old now. Yeah. And still modern day millionaires are still recommending this book, and I thought it was a great read. Yeah, I really enjoyed it because after you read it, you had me read it. So, The Richest Man in Babylon.
All right, so those are our 2 books, and I'm honestly surprised that, or I want to mention that neither of us did bring a Dave Ramsey book, which I'm shocked by. I was going to, but I was also trying to be different. I wanted to be unique, but then here you go, bringing that book, which is not a Dave Ramsey book.
Right. This is kind of an author that was kind of the Dave Ramsey before Dave Ramsey was a thing, obviously, from the 1920s.
So, but since we're on it, Dad, off the top of your head, because I know you and Mom have taught financial peace, is there like a Dave Ramsey book that would be good to start reading for the New Year's?
No, I mean, all the material I've come across of his has been good.
Yeah.
So I have not kept up with his latest books that he's come out with.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
Or is it his daughter?
Yeah, I think it's his daughter.
I haven't read any of her books, but I'm sure they're good.
Yeah.
So
it seems like with these books, from our description, it's like they were both working hard, they were both making their money, and they were both barely meeting their needs. And it was kind of like the question, like what's happening to either it's what are we doing with all of our time, or what's happening with our income? Like where is it all going?
Yeah, because a lot of it is, and grabbing one of these books we recommend and start reading it might be the first step, but it's all about taking control of it. No more longer saying if my boss would just give me a $1 an hour raise, that would make all the difference in the world, or or if this and this would happen to me, then that'd be fine. But realizing, okay, if I can take control with what God has entrusted me with and be wise about it, that's when I can start making a difference.
Yeah.
So it's not about making more money per se, because if you just make more money and you don't know what to do with it,
you're just going to lose it.
You're just going to lose it. I mean, I've heard one person talk about, I worked, their goal one year was to work a ton of overtime, and they ended up making, I think they said $15,000 more that year in just overtime.
Wow.
And then they were like, but I have no idea where the money went.
Yeah.
I don't have any more money left in my savings account. I don't have anything nicer than the year before. So it's just about taking control. Oh, go ahead.
I do remember when reading a Dave Ramsey book, because I had to do it for one of my classes too. It talks about like the first step. Everyone describes that as the scariest step, which is to sit down and figure out or create a budget.
Yeah.
And so you're going to figure out how much you make and then what that money is going to in each different category.
Yeah.
And that's always the scariest. And which I can agree with. The times, of making a budget. Mm-hmm. At first, it's scary, but by the end of it, like you just feel like you're in total control.
Right.
Because every dollar is designated to something. Yeah.
And this book, Richest Man in Babylon, it's about more than just making a budget and, itemizing your dollar and telling it where to go, so to speak. And it is a fun read. And that's coming from somebody that doesn't really like to read.
Yeah.
I mean, so I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, nothing I can think of.
It sounds like whenever you sit down and you start controlling your finances, you're being good stewards of what God has given you.
So if you're ready to start controlling it, and now you just need that knowledge, I mean,
then here we go.
These are some good starters right here.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, that concludes our hot topic. So before we dive into our scripture, we're going to take a short break. Back from the break. I almost did the intro again. All right, so where we left off from last month is we were going through the different parables. And so the parable that we have chosen for today is the parable of the 4 soils. So we're going to be reading Matthew 13, and then we're going to read 1 through 9, and then we're going to jump ahead to 18 through 23. So, Dad, do you want to read 1 through 9?
Sure. Matthew chapter 13.
Yes, sir.
First 9 verses. Okay.
Yep.
The same day went Jesus out of the house and sat by the seaside, and great multitudes were gathered together unto him, so that he went into a ship and sat, and the whole multitude stood on the shore. And he spake many things unto them in parables, saying, Behold, a sower went forth to sow. And when he sowed, some seeds fell by the wayside, and the fowls came and devoured them. Some fell upon stony places where they had not much earth, and forthwith they sprung up, because they had no deepness of earth. And when the sun was up, they were scorched, and because they had no root, they withered away. And some fell among thorns, and the thorns sprung up and choked them. But other fell into good ground, and brought forth fruit, some 100-fold, some 60-fold, some 30-fold. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear.
All right, so jumping ahead to verse 18 now. Hear ye therefore the parable of the sower. When anyone heareth the word of the kingdom, and understandeth it not, then cometh the wicked one, and catcheth away that which was sown in his heart. This is he which received seed by the wayside. But he that received the seed into stony places, the same is he that heareth the word, and anon with joy receiveth it. Yet hath he not root in himself, but dureth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution ariseth because of the word, by and by he is offended. He also that received seed among the thorns is he that heareth the word, and the care of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becometh unfruitful. But he that received seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word, and understandeth it, which also beareth fruit, and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Okay, so here we have 4 different soils. Some were thrown on the wayside, some were thrown in stony places, some fell among thorns, and then some landed on the good ground. So, Dad, what stuck out to you?
All right. Well, you just kind of summed it up.
All right, so we're done. That was a quick recording.
This one always kind of gets to me because the very first time I ever went to the altar, this was what was preached on.
Okay. Wow,
So, very first time. And I just felt like the world was just choking me out, keeping me away from, the word.
Yeah.
So yeah. So this parable really gets to me. So
I'd like to point out, because when Jesus ends this parable, he says in verse 9, "Who hath ears to hear, let him hear." And then whenever he's talking and he's describing, he says, like in the first one, whenever it's the wayside ground, jumping ahead to verse 19, he says that anyone who hears the word of the kingdom and understandeth it not. So it's almost like whenever you hear it, there's that second layer. As Christians, it almost doesn't need to be said, but right now it's having to be said, where you need to have an understanding of it. It's no longer enough to just hear it. Mm-hmm. You kind of have to have this desire to continue to grow after it.
Yeah, and that's actually pretty good, and it fits, right in the middle of this parable, because that's kind of what this is about.
Yeah.
You hear and read the scripture,
yeah,
and you respond a certain way,
mm-hmm.
And other people will hear and read the scripture, and they'll just respond a totally different way. So it's like, why? Why is that? So, and I think this kind of answers that.
And like also with the wayside ground, it reminded me of back in Egypt with Moses and Pharaoh, whenever it talks about how God hardened Pharaoh's heart, like the seeds couldn't even take any root at all during that time, because his heart was so hardened, and that's what the soils are representing.
Right. So the wayside, my understanding is that path that's walked upon so much that it's just become hard, like concrete. Anybody that has a dog that stays in the backyard a lot kind of knows that path that the dog has made. Usually it's like from the gate to the back door or up and down a fence line that they're usually running, barking at another dog.
When we were living at our old house, it was right there behind the gate that led to the backyard. Because I remember Star's footprints were always there, and they hardened. Yeah.
And you kind of know it because when you go to mow, there's always that path where there's no grass growing. Yeah. And it's just because it's been trodden down so much. He's saying that some people's hearts are like that nothing's going to grow there anymore. It's just been hardened. And so when the scriptures are given to them, or the word, it just won't take root. It won't sink in at all. So the fowls, the birds, come and just devour it.
Yeah.
They just take it away from you.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there are people that just want to take away the truth, that want to take away the joy from your life. So, which we should probably clarify the seed. I don't know if you did or not. The seed is the word of God. And we're told that in Luke. I don't
think I clarified that.
In Luke chapter 8, verse 11, which is where this is also presented. Mm-hmm. In Luke 8:11, it clarifies that the seed is the word of God.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. All right. And then also what stuck out to me was, since we're talking about, or going to the next one, was he that received seed in the stony places. Mm-hmm. And it talks about he receives it, and it says, and anon with joy receiveth it. So I looked it up. So anon means like for a short period of time. So for a short period of time, they have that joy.
Yeah.
And it just like the roots barely grow, but then there's not enough for it to continue. And I don't know if you ever heard this, but it reminded me of the saying church camp high.
Oh, okay.
That's what my thought process led to. Because like when you go to a church camp, you know, you have all these others, which you assume fellow believers, you know, and there's normally like this really pumped up like praise band, and they're playing these like really emotional songs. So then there's also this emotional pull that you're going through that week, and you're also kind of getting tired as the week goes. So you're just letting your guard down, and you're getting more into it, and then when, like, you're just so excited and you're on fire, and then you go home, and then like nothing changes, and you don't try to deepen that understanding. Yeah. Then nothing's gonna grow.
Yeah, and it even says in here about, you know, for when tribulation or persecution arise because of the word, then by and by he is offended. So, I mean, I can totally see that. You get into this church camp high, is that what you called it? Yep. But then they go back to school, and they're around peers just like they were at church camp, but now these peers are acting different, and they might mock them or make fun of them or say, well, your belief offends me. Yeah. You know, you can't talk like that. You can't tell us what's in the Bible. That's hate speech. Yeah. And so then it's like, it just kind of would go away. Yeah. There needs to be that deep root. And I'm not picking on, you know, young kids at all. I know they have to have it rough today. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, the same can be applied to us adults. Yeah. You know, we'll have that Sunday morning high, and then we go to work and we give in to, you know, acting and behaving in a way that we shouldn't.
Yeah. I was telling you about this before we started shooting the podcast. You know, you think about it, you maybe get a 30-minute sermon or service on Sunday mornings, and then 30-minute intentional service on Wednesday, and that's 1 hour service out of the whole week. Mm-hmm. And normally that's, for some people, that's where it stops.
Yeah. So it needs to be broken. The ground needs to be broken up, and it needs to be prepared. Yeah. You know, because it talks about the stony places. I don't know if you've ever taken a drive in the country, or maybe you live in the country and you've seen this, where they'll have some barbed wire fencing up, and at the corner of the fencing, they'll have this huge wire cage with rocks inside of it. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen that or not. Those rocks came from the ground around there. When the landowner would buy that, there would be rocks everywhere, and it wouldn't really bring forth much of whatever they wanted to grow, whether it was grass for cattle or whatever. So they would collect all those rocks, all those stones, and then they would find a purpose for them. Yeah. They would use them to keep the fence up. Okay. And so it's about preparing that ground. It's about losing your identity for Christ so that you can become useful. Yeah. I mean,
and since we had 5 acres and did a garden, I know what it means to prepare the ground, all the tilling that you have to do to break it up. Yeah. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is a lot of work.
Yeah. All right. So then the third one. So some fell among the thorns. Okay. So Dad, I want to hear what you think, because I know you kind of mentioned that at the beginning of this talk. But what you think or how that looks like in real life.
Okay, so again in verse 22, we'll read that again. He that receives seed among the thorns is he that hears the word, and the care of this world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and he becomes unfruitful. So it's like there's that battle for position in your life. You know, what's going to take precedence in your life?
Yeah.
There's only so much Caleb to go around. You know, you only have so much time, you only have so much energy, you only have so much talent. So if you're constantly thinking, okay, if I can just take care of this and this, then I'll start putting God first. If I can make a little bit more money so I'm not stressed out about finances, I'll start putting God first. And it's just not going to happen. You'll just be choked out.
Yeah.
So I feel like.
Yeah, I read a book once. I might have said it in one of the episodes, but I don't know. I wouldn't remember if I did. But it talks about time management. Mm-hmm. And then it talks about, like, you know, if you don't dedicate each hour to a specific thing of your choice, kind of, then the world is going to just come and just take your time, and you're not going to know what happens, you know? And I think a lot of, like screen time. Like, you can check your screen time. And I'll be sitting in classes, and this was in my freshman year of college, one of the professors, like, hey, some of y'all just shout out what some of your screen time is. And there was people who had like 8 or 9 hours or more of screen time.
Yeah.
You know, and there's some days where I'm shifting between 4 or 5 hours, which is quite a lot of screen time, and none of it's important.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just creeping in, so, and just taking over.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not going to be enough. If I can just get a little bit more, you know, which we talked about earlier, you know, it's not going to be enough.
Yeah.
So you can tell when somebody, and I was speaking about this earlier with someone, you can tell when somebody is taking the reins and trying to hustle and get prosperity themselves versus whenever, you know, they're just letting go and just letting God control and direct them.
Yeah.
You know, and I do want to stress that it is about being responsible. I want to be realistic. I don't want to be one of those, you know, we'll just let go and just see what God does. Don't do anything, you know. But I don't want you to be where it's like, okay, I need to handle it all. I need to take care of it all. You know, a prime example of that, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is with like Abraham and Lot. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, whenever they both of their farms grew so much that they were like, okay, we have to split up. There's not enough land here. And Abraham asked Lot, you know, where do you want to go? And so Lot, you could tell, was wanting to hustle for himself and do it himself. And he was like, okay, I see green pastures over here, so I'm going to take this over here by Sodom.
Yeah.
You know, and Abraham was like, okay, I'm just going to go and continue with integrity, hard work, continue rising up early in the morning and doing what he does. And so God took care of Abraham. Yeah. And of course, Sodom was trying to take care Lot was trying to take care of Lot. Mm-hmm. And you see how that turned out for his legacy. Yeah. So, and another one is Joseph. You know, Joseph wasn't hustling and trying to become the second most powerful man in the world, you know, second to only Pharaoh. He just kept integrity. You know, he had a good, honest work, and I mean, and the Lord just directed his path, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
That's good. That's real good. Anything else?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. So the fourth and final soil was the good soil that was able to produce
the good
fruit.
Ground.
So this would definitely be a time, Dad, for some good advice. What does the good ground look like? And like we talked about, like you prepare it. So how do we prepare the good ground?
I will say, from a gardening standpoint, my limited experience into gardening is the more you prepare, the more you can tell. Yeah. I mean, you can go so far as do an analysis of the soil, which I've done before. You know, you can take so many samples and put it in a cup and go take it to your local agriculture place, and they'll do an analysis. And they'll say, okay, what do you want to grow in this soil? And you tell them, and then a couple weeks later, they give you the report back, and they're like, okay, if this is what you want to grow. If you want to grow fruit trees in this type of soil, then this is how you need to treat it. for the next year, this is what you need to do in the spring. This is what you need to do in the summer. This is how you need to treat it in the fall. This is how you need to treat it in the winter in order to have the ground that you need to grow. So I guess we need to figure out what we want our life to look like.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what do you want your life to look like? And then we'll know how to treat it.
Yeah. And I know that's actually good advice because you've told me a lot, like whenever I ask you a question on like a decision to make, you're always like, okay, well, in 5 years, where does Caleb want to be in 5 years? Like 5 years from now, I want 26-year-old Caleb to look back and be like, hey, thank you, Caleb, at age 21 for doing this. Mm-hmm. You set everything up quite nicely. Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, like that's a good example. Yeah. Do you want to be known as a God-fearing man, that will stand on the Word of God and just protect the truths of it, to be a watchman, then you know how to treat your heart. What kind of treatment does it need? Okay, I need to know the truth first off. If I'm going to protect it, what am I protecting? So you have to read the Word, which means you have to make it a priority, just about every successful, and I don't know if this is where we were planning on going or not, but about every successful multi-million-dollar or billion-dollar company has goals.
Yeah.
And they'll even have goals so that when they're talking in meetings about what to do, how to expand, they're like, okay, let's go back to our goal. Is this in line with our goal?
Yeah.
Or you're just going to go off on so many tangents that, it's just going to be useless. Mm-hmm. So you're going to be spread too thin. So what's your goal,
That's a perfect question to ask at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
For our first podcast of the year.
Yeah, that's true.
So I was thinking about that. This whole episode kind of lined up perfectly. And I don't know. Did you do that on purpose?
No.
I did not do that on purpose.
No. But so if you want to be known as a child of God, then how do you need to frame your life around that?
Yeah.
It's going to change what you see as priorities and just a lot of things.
And one of the things I can think of specifically that I think will be a big deal breaker when it comes to preparing that soil, it's what I think of, it's prayer time. Because first of all, praying for long periods of time is really difficult. Because most of the time, you're going to pray up to 5 minutes, and then after that, you're either going to find yourself bored or just repeating yourself. So, like, a lot more thought needs to be put in with prayer. I know this episode is not about prayer, but prayer is one of the tools you can use to prepare your heart, to let the seed grow stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
And I think, especially for me, that's somewhere I think I'm weak in. Because, I think, okay, right before I go to bed, just like a quick 60-second prayer, and then I'll be good. You know what I mean? Or I've prayed right before I ate. That should be good. So I pray at least 3 times a day. Yeah. But it's that constant. Because even when Jesus was tired, he still made that time to go off and pray. Like, he would separate himself from everybody, But...
And just, going back to preparing, if anybody out there has done gardening, you usually know by August you're just kind of spent. Yeah. It's just like tiring, the weeding and everything. So I would say the most successful garden we ever had was we also planned for that time, and we put a tarp down. And so we put a tarp down, cut X's in it, and then that's where we put all our plants.
Yeah.
So by August, September, we all enjoyed it because we knew that every time we went out there, we wouldn't have to spend our time pulling weeds. We were able to, get tomatoes and peppers. And it was an enjoyable year for the garden.
Yeah.
And it was because we prepared for it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Dad, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, so he hears the word and he understands it, and he bears fruit. So I think we need to apply the word.
Yeah.
To be a doer of the word.
Very much so.
Take something that you normally wouldn't do. What's one of the action verbs in the Bible that would kind of make you get out of your comfort zone? Is it going and visiting somebody in prison? To spread the message of hope to them, or the gospel.
Yeah, and I never thought of it until now, but it seems like understanding is supposed to be an action, right? Because whenever someone's not putting in the action, then the most they're going to do is hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But to understand it, you have to go a step further and put in more of a process. You know what I mean? Like, because you could read the scripture like what we're doing now, and we're understanding what the parable means, but that doesn't, I don't think, completely mean we understand it if all we do is this and then nothing else.
Right.
Like, we don't act on it.
You're right, yeah. So, feeding people that are hungry. I mean, there's a lot of action verbs in there that we can use to spread the gospel. Yeah. I mean, so it's like I don't remember if I said this before on another podcast or what, but a mentor of mine, I hadn't talked to him in the longest time, and then talked to him over the phone, and one of the first things he asked me was like, Joe, when's the last time you led somebody to the Lord? And I thought, well, it's been a while. And he said, well, why is that? Yeah. And I immediately thought of all the basic excuses that I would use about, well, the Lord hasn't led me to anybody, or the Lord hasn't brought any up before me. But then I know where sinners hang out. Mm-hmm. I know where the lost hang out. Yeah. So some people that need to be saved, I know where they are. Yeah. See, Dad, you're too wise to have done it. But also, it would have been interesting if you had tried to use one of them and then just see his response, like what his answer would be to each one. You know what I mean? Of what? Of an excuse of why you haven't led someone. Mm-hmm. Mm. Like, oh man, God hasn't brought someone into my life yet. And just see what his response would have been, Because I don't know how I would respond to that. Yeah. How would you respond? If somebody were to say that to me. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's just kind of like whenever years and years ago when I was looking at planning a church, the director was like, okay, take me to where the lost people are. And I had to think about it, and I was like, or he said, take me to where lost people hang out. And so I thought about it, and, that's where we went. And so. Well, there you go. Just go to where the lost are. Yeah. So. Anything else you'd like to add? But, I mean, that's getting out of my comfort zone now. Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to do that. We're not trying to make that much progress this year. Yeah. So we still have the whole year, right? But, yeah, let's try to put something into action to bear fruit. So. Yeah, that's good. Good stuff. All right, so that's going to conclude our episode. Since you stuck with us this long, we would ask that you would like, subscribe, share, and then also comment. Comment any New Year's resolutions you feel comfortable sharing. Comment any questions you have, or just any encouragement you would like for us to read. Dad, anything else you want to say in closing out? No, that's it. All right, we'll see y'all next week.